Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's dive into a story that's equal parts science, irony, and a splash of sweet, wet revenge. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. My compliance masterpiece, the birth of an urban wetland. It all goes back to the summer of 2021. I started working as a biologist at an urban farm, planning and constructing polyculture systems to research food production. I developed a plan for noxious weed control and started to construct the systems over the course of 2 years. During this time, we had some back and forth with the city council who didn't understand the nature of our agriculturally zoned property. After several meetings and lots of work over 2 years, we'd finally made a lot of progress and reached an agreement with the city by the summer of 2023. Part of the agreement was to mow ditches by the small yard of our property's farmhouse. I'll remind you, the property is zoned as agriculture, so we have no obligation to follow residential ordinances. About halfway through the summer, at the end of July, the city came onto our property and mowed an entire native pasture that was soon to be an orchard of already planted baby trees. When we talked to them, they noted ordinances against tall grass and state noxious weed laws as justification. The latter of which is ironic because they interrupted our system of invasive plant control by mowing in a time when we should have been spraying bioherbicide. So now, in order to remove all the invasive plants from my property and comply with all the ordinances, none of which have anything to do with water, I've created a massive urban wetlands. It's huge, it's beautiful, it's wet, it's compliant to every law and ordinance. It's mine, and the city mayor who lives next door to my farm can enjoy it just as much as I enjoy it living 5 miles away. So now I have a wetlands to research instead of a prairie. And I love it. If you think about it, anything you can do to bring public attention to your properties to your benefit, you're doing important work. And a lot of people would be supportive if they were aware of it. If the city tried to do you dirty, those people would unleash the rage of the internet. And our second story. I won't reset anyone's phone anymore. I work at a phone repair shop in South Florida, and let me tell you, we see the worst. One of the most common requests we get is for phone resets or restores. I usually refuse these requests, mainly because the people who come in for this service often have a lower understanding of what it actually entails. And when I explain it to them, it's like talking to a brick wall. I've learned to go into great detail when explaining the reset process. I'll tell them something like this verbatim. Me. The restore erases everything on your phone. Pictures, messages, mail, contacts, apps, everything will be gone. It'll be like you never owned this phone. A brand new phone, as far as software is concerned, everything of yours will be erased. Despite this thorough explanation, people just don't get it. Over time, I stopped offering the service altogether. I started telling people that our computer doesn't have iTunes and that we're not authorized to perform restores. It was easier for me and honestly a win. I didn't have to deal with these people who wouldn't understand, and I didn't like this part of the job anyway. Then one day, a middle-aged lady walks in with an issue that AT&T had sent her for. She needed her phone reset. I'd already started my usual spiel about refusing the service, but my boss told me to go ahead and do it since she was sent by AT&T. I asked him if he was sure because she was already acting a little rude and I had a bad feeling about her. He said, "It's fine, just do it." So I reluctantly reset her phone, explaining the entire process as I usually do. I warned her that everything would be erased. I did the reset, and as soon as I finished, she was absolutely lost. She couldn't understand why everything on her phone was gone. I just looked at my boss with a look that said, "You see why I said no?" She started trying to log into her email and freaked out when she saw it was signed out. She started screaming, "OMG, why the F did AT&T send me here? You deleted my emails." I kindly said, "Ma'am, I told you that everything would be erased when the phone was reset." She immediately denied it, saying I never mentioned anything about that. I said, "Yes, ma'am, I did." She insisted, "No, you didn't." I went, "Okay, cool. We have security cameras so I can show you exactly what was said." I pulled out my phone, went to the app, and pulled up the video of our conversation. As soon as she saw the video, she started backpedaling, but now she was angry, saying that it was unprofessional to use the video as proof, She claimed I should have just taken her word for it because the customer is always right. After that, the company stopped doing restores altogether. It's just easier to avoid the hassle. I'm convinced it's just customers expecting phones and things to be so overly complicated that they don't bother to really listen or try to understand. You should have had a form that they read and sign before a reset or restore that makes them acknowledge that the reset will wipe everything from the phone. And our next story. Clocking in and calling out, a manager's revenge. Many years ago, I was managing a company that was part of a national chain. We served customers all over the world with internet, phone, and we also had a high volume of walk-in customers on site. My regional manager made it clear to me that I was not to authorize any overtime. If a customer walked in or called in a few minutes before closing and would require an employee to work over 30 to 60 minutes to service the customer and make a sale, I would allow them to come in late the next day by 30 or 60 minutes they had worked over the night before. I balanced the time every week with no overtime and reported regular hours on payroll. We were working a bi-monthly pay period. One day, when I was off, the regional manager paid a surprise visit to the site I was managing. He had a meeting with all the employees in my absence and read them the riot act and demanded that all of them must report promptly in the morning at the start of their shift and leave in the same manner at the end of the shift, and they must report actual times on the handwritten time cards to the minute. My team reports this to me the following day, and we comply. We rack up a bunch of overtime over the next 2 weeks, with those that got caught up servicing customers at the end of the day after hours. After submitting the timesheets, the regional manager calls me and goes off on me about the overtime. It went like this. RM, what the hell is going on over there? I told you no overtime. This is unacceptable. I did not authorize this. Me, did you visit my facility and have a meeting with my staff in my absence and demand that actual times must be reported and they have to be punctual and leave promptly? RM, yes, I did. Me, I've been managing this by allowing people to work late and come in late to eliminate overtime and make sales. We close at 5. We expect a sales rep to answer the phone at 4:59, work with the customer, and make a sale. If a customer walks in at 4:59, we expect the sales rep to work with the customer and make a sale. This could take 15 minutes to an hour. I appreciate my staff doing this to service the customer, and we're now complying with your new rule to report actual times. You really shook up my staff on your last visit, and I can't manage this anymore. RM, forget we had this conversation and go back to what you were doing. I would have just let staff leave at their scheduled time. In the middle of a sale? Too bad. I'm sure boss man will get the message after a few customers complained. And our last story. From HOA president to jail. The rise and fall of a Karen. When I bought my house in 2019 from my uncle, I knew what I was getting into. The neighborhood had an HOA, but my uncle hadn't joined, and I wasn't about to either. He sold me the house for a steal, and that alone made dealing with the HOA drama worth it. Or so I thought. Not long after moving in, I had my first encounter with the HOA president, Karen. She showed up at my door with a fake smile and a welcome basket. She immediately launched into how I needed to fill out forms to join the HOA. I shut her down quickly, telling her I had no intention of joining. Her fake smile vanished faster than free donuts in an office break room. She warned me I'd regret it, called me a bad neighbor, and stormed off. Over the next few months, she sent passive-aggressive letters about my grass, driveway, and even how my trash cans were positioned. Nothing major, just enough to irritate me. I shrugged it off. Things escalated when I installed an EV charger in my garage for my electric car. That's when Karen decided to turn up the heat. One Saturday morning, I caught Karen snooping around my driveway. She had the audacity to knock on my door and demand that I share my EV charger with the neighborhood because, according to her, HOA members have equal access to all shared resources. I reminded her as politely as I could that I wasn't part of the HOA and my EV charger was private property installed at my expense. She wasn't having it. Karen, you think you can just waltz in here and not abide by our rules? That charger belongs to the community. It's not fair for you to keep it to yourself. Me. Karen, it's my charger on my property, paid for with my money. You have no claim to it. If you want one, get your own. She stormed off, muttering something about how she'd fix this. I didn't think much of it at the time, but Karen was just getting started. A few days later, I was at work when I got an alert from my security cameras. The footage showed Karen breaking into my garage with a crowbar. She was trying to plug in her car while yelling at someone on the phone, probably bragging about her victory. I immediately called the police and rushed home. By the time I arrived, the cops were already there. Karen was arguing with them, claiming the EV charger was public property and that she was within her rights to use it. The officers didn't buy it, especially after I showed them the footage of her forcing her way into my garage. Karen, this is ridiculous. He's hoarding resources. He's the problem in this neighborhood. Officer, ma'am, you broke into private property. You're under arrest. Watching Karen get handcuffed and stuffed into the back of a squad car was deeply satisfying. Karen was charged with breaking and entering, vandalism, and trespassing. She got 6 months in jail and probation. Her husband, who seemed like a decent guy, called to apologize. He even helped me repair the garage door she'd destroyed. The HOA quickly replaced Karen as president, and the new leadership was far more reasonable. The husband got full custody of their kids, and Karen's reputation in the neighborhood was toast. About a year later, I ran into Karen again, of all places, at a grocery store in another city. She was bagging groceries, and when our eyes met, her face twisted into a scowl. I just smiled and waved. She refused to look at me for the rest of my visit. I walked out of that store knowing karma had delivered her just desserts. Honestly, the part where she tried to justify her actions to the police by calling you the problem in the neighborhood is almost comical. Karen, sweetie, you're the one breaking laws and treating someone else's garage like a public charging station. Did she really think her warped HOA logic would hold up in court? Spoiler alert, it didn't. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.